in SNCC and in the civil rights movement. SNCC was the youth arm of the civil rights movement, and in a sense, a lot of the politics of the Occupy movement were embodied in SNCC, which began to infect other groups like SDS with that philosophy and outlook. For example, the concept of participatory democracy was one that came out of SNCC, came from a woman named Mrs. Ella Baker, who was a mentor and teacher to the student movement, the black student movement in the Deep South. She herself was in her 60s. She had been active in civil rights work throughout the South for over 35 years by the time the SNCC came up, and she was the one who facilitated SNCC coming into being. One of the things that is important to know about SNCC is that when Bilal talked about SDS, the radicalization of SDS, SNCC was the one that invited the students from SDS and other groups to join with them in doing work in the Deep South around voter registration, particularly in Mississippi, the Mississippi Summer Program. The experiences that people had in that work is what radicalized the civil rights movement, and it did two things. It radicalized SNCC from a position of civil rights politics to a position of raising issues about power and who holds power in this country and what that really means, particularly economic and political power. And so the Black Power movement was a creation. It was an outgrowth of the activity of SNCC in the Deep South. The Black Panther Party, as I mentioned, the original Black Panther Party was called the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, was based in Lowndes County, Alabama, and came out of those voter registration drives. SDS got very radical because of its experiences in Mississippi, and that's actually was after SDS sent volunteers down to work in Mississippi with SNCC that folks went back to the campuses throughout the North, Midwest, and the Far West and started organizing the student movement as a mass phenomena of the 1960s with a very radical critique of our society and a very activist orientation. Now, at that time, as both of these forces started growing, we began to see a lot of repression come in against SNCC in particular, both in the form of legal repression of some of the leaders of SNCC, like Stokely Carmichael, who was restricted to travel at one point to the limits of Washington, D.C., H. Rap Brown, who succeeded him as chairman of SNCC, who at various times was restricted to the island of Manhattan in New York. Later, he was restricted to Washington, D.C., and other measures, very unusual repressive measures, because the system was attempting to contain the radicalism that was coming out of the black movement at that time. Now, the truth is that didn't really work because the whole country basically went radical in that period anyway. But the repression against the black movement was the spearhead of that. That repression later was extended to all these other movements, SDS, the women's movement, all the radical movements. Now, I'm going to mention this because, you know, there is another level of repression beginning to come at the Occupy movement now. And I was at a meeting today, and someone on a phone call mentioned that in the city of Santa Cruz, occupiers occupied an empty Bank of America facility in that town. And when they were taken out, seized by the police, and charged, they were all charged with felony counts. Felony counts of, I don't know what exactly, I'm waiting to get the specific information, but the point is that they're trying to bring stronger and stronger charges against occupiers for our protest activities, for our First Amendment activities. Here at City Hall, people were busted and charged $5,000 fines. When I was arrested in Long Beach a few weeks later, the fine they put on me was $10,000. And likewise, the other guy who was busted down there with me. Okay, and I expect that as we accelerate this work around mortgage foreclosures, which is beginning to happen right now, that they're going to come down on us hard. The banks, the politicians are going to try to come down on us very, very hard. And we're going to have to do the same kind of stuff that the Black Panthers, SDS, and other groups did in the late 1960s very successfully. We're going to have to build successful defense campaigns to get the heat off of our activists and win over the support of the broad public for what we are trying to do. And bottom line, Occupy the Hood for many months, as you know, has been emphasizing, number one, that we have to become a community-based movement. And number two, we need to become a movement of organizers. It is not enough for us to congregate here together with each other. We are already the conscious minority. We've got to go after organizing the broad base of that 99%. That is the only thing that will make our politics and our movement effective and successful. And it is also the only way that we can defend this movement against the repression that I see coming down right now. Because there's a lot of funny politics, just like what our state attorney general pulled a week and a half ago after 6 months of claiming that she wasn't going to sign on to this bogus federal agreement with the banks to settle with the banks about any criminal liability for what they've been doing with people's homes. She sold the homeowners in this state out basically and flip-flopped on them just like that. We saw the same thing here at City Hall with the mayor and the city council. More of that stuff's going to be coming down the pike as the struggle heats up. The homeowners are stepping up. Folks on Skid Row are stepping up to fight for their human rights. Other groups are standing up now, and that's going to start converging with what we're doing. We need to make sure that we're converging with that motion also. So thanks to everybody for coming out to this GA. I appreciate the fact that occupiers are trying to raise their own level of understanding of a lot of different struggles that you may not have been directly a part of. This is absolutely essential for us to build a serious movement that can change things. So thank you.
Thank you.